1. Look, I don't know what the fuck it is. Neckbeards are drawn to me. Maybe I'm a masochist with a savior complex. Maybe I'm just neckbait. But either way, I spend a lot of time in the company of emotionally manipulative assholes. Some of whom actually have worn fedoras. Fedorae? Whatever. Here's the most recent one. I met Jefferson at our school's tabletop game club. Right away, I could tell we'd clash on a few things. I'm an ambiguously gay feminist who interns at a homelessness nonprofit. He's a libertarian, Trump-voting environmental science major. But he seemed pretty cool, and we could both put political stuff aside and be friends. Fight out whatever you have to say in the comments. After some time, Jefferson told me about the book he was writing. I won't go too far into it, but it was a sci-fi novel starring a teenage girl, so he wanted some advice from someone who had experience in that field. The funnier parts of that conversation. He genuinely couldn't accept the concept that a girl might be judged more on her appearance than a guy. As his character is bi, he asked me a lot of questions about my sex life, loudly. We were in the dining hall. Apparently, me not wanting to tell him in great detail about my experience level eating girls out makes me a prude. Here's the less funny part. Jefferson. So you've gotta understand that this is a girl with some value. Not, you know, like you. Me. Like me? Jefferson. You know, defective. I decided to play along, if only for you beautiful motherfuckers. Me. So what exactly does defective mean? Jefferson. I mean, I could list a few things. For starters, your head's fucked. Don't you take stuff for that? For context, I take antidepressants. I'd mentioned it once in a conversation about healthcare, pre-existing conditions, and I didn't think Jefferson would use it like this. I'm also an ex-cutter, which affects my life more than it probably should. Me, yeah, but that's a genetic thing that I'm dealing with. How does that make me defective? Jefferson. It's an evolutionary weakness, like the whole, you know, with a cutting motion on his wrist, slice and dice thing. You end up locked in the psych ward for that. No guy's going to want you there. Again, we were in public. As speaking softly is not Jefferson's strongest suit, he prefers to talk at you and anyone in the immediate vicinity. I could already see the next table in the caf looking over at us. I tried to shut down the conversation as fast as I could, without some kind of freakout. Me. Well, it's lucky I like girls then. Jefferson. Well, yeah. That does actually give you some redemption. The whole virgin thing. Me. Jefferson. You know that my girlfriend and I have fucked, right? Jefferson. Yeah, but that doesn't count as like real sex. Neither of you has a dick. So you still have that bit of value as a girl. Some guy's gonna get to take that. But outside that, you really don't hold much value as a girl. Jefferson reached across the table as if to take my hand, but I grabbed it away. Jefferson. Look, Luna. You're just not the kind of person who gets loved, okay? You should take what you can get while you can. Now, 2 years ago, I might have fallen for that. Now, though, I'm proud to say that I got up, gave him a withering look, and walked away while Needed Me by Rihanna played in the background. Except I didn't. I'd had a bad day overall, so when Jefferson hit that particular nerve, I began tearing up on the spot. And when he tried to give me an awkward conciliatory pat on the shoulder, I straight up started sobbing. Jefferson stuck around a little while longer, until the dirty looks he was getting from a couple girls at the next table started getting to be too much, at which point he skedaddled. Bright side, one of the girls gave me a wet wipe for my mascara and asked me if I needed a hug, which was highly appreciated. Gotta love girl code. 2. I want to start by saying that ever since I was a little kid, I've always been fascinated by classical melee weapons and things like swordsmanship. My father happily encouraged this and helped me to get a formal education in martial combat, probably because it got me away from my Super Nintendo finally. No, I've never been super amazing at it. I'm not Conan or Jaime Lannister, but I know how to hold a sword and what to swing at. One day, I want to say I was like 14 at the time, my mom took me with her to visit this antique shop in downtown Covington. It was heaven. Aside from the usual knickknacks and curios, there were tons of antique weapons and blades. I was a kid in a candy store getting to hold and examine so many different types of weapons all at once. But things were about to get weird. While I was letting my imagination run wild, while trying to lift a reproduction of a Scottish claymore, he appeared. He looked like he was 7 feet tall from where I stood, pale and pasty with thick acne across his glistening skin, and a long red shimmering rat tail hanging past his shoulders. "So, you like weapons, I see," he said with a smug and haughty tone. "Yeah," I cautiously replied. It wasn't like I could lie. He'd seen me drilling over a mace not 2 minutes ago. "Then, perhaps I could interest you in our new line of safety swords." As he said this, he motioned to a rack that was lined with gaudy, brightly coloured foam pads on PVC pipes. All of them were vaguely shaped to resemble a sword, and I guess they were of decent quality. The problem was that my teacher taught me using full-contact sparring with solid oak replicas. So, upon seeing these toys, and being a stuck-up my-own-ass teenager, I of course turned my nose up at them and declined. "No thanks," I told him. "My teacher doesn't like to baby me. We only use solid oak." "Oh, wow," he said with a snide chuckle. "Your sensei sounds like a real idiot. If you trained with these things, you wouldn't have to constantly worry about hurting the other person. If you want, I can even let you try one out. I have to warn you though, I practice with everything in this store. So don't get sad when I beat you." Again, teenager, so upon hearing my teacher and his method get insulted, I couldn't help but take some umbrage with him. Biting back on my boiling Irish rage, I forced up a smile and decided to take his offer. So we headed out into the alley behind the store with our chosen weapons. I would like to note that when we walked outside, I was quickly treated to his powerful body odor. Like a foul pot of weak old chili that someone added old gym socks to. I suddenly knew why the owner had been burning incense when we walked in. The moment the fight started, I moved in and started using every trick I'd learned on him. Parrying, tripping, hilt strikes, legs and arms. I even got behind him more than once and struck him across the head. I was surprised there wasn't a louder wet slap when I hit his greasy head. Despite all of this talk of skill and mastery of all weapons under his boss's roof, I made him look like he was standing still. By the end of the match, he was panting and sweating while blaming the summer heat in spite of the cool 68. Politely, I handed him back the foam toy and thanked him for the workout, but declined the product. Upon seeing my teacher the next day, I told him of the story of how I slew the bearded giant that spoke ill of him. He laughed, gave me a pat on the back, and then beat me mercilessly for the rest of the class. 3. This story doesn't take place anywhere in Asia. I am a 14-year-old Asian guy that just so happens to like video games. So as some background history, I frequent this local internet cafe that is mostly dominated by CSGO players. What is CSGO, you may ask? Good question. Counter-Strike Global Offensive is a game where two sides are pitted against each other. The terrorist side and the counter-terrorist side. Terrorists have to plant the bomb on either the A or B site, or kill the entire counter-terrorist side, which I'll refer to from now on as CT. The CT side has to either defuse the bomb, if it gets planted, or kill the terrorists before they plant it in the first place. Now this game from the surface seems generic, but underneath are game mechanics that are pretty complex. One's confronted with them, but after a while, you get used to it and slowly get better after playing for a while. However, there are some people who refuse to get better, and usually think they're already the best in the world, even though they're probably in the lower ranks. Here I introduce you to CS Beard and his team, which I'll refer to as the Neckbeards. The Neckbeards are self-proclaimed pros that dominate the entire cafe, and usually scare off the women that want to try getting into CSGO by flexing their, at best, average skill and being enormous creeps. Which is also why only males are frequenting the cafe. Before I get started into the story, the cafe mostly revolves around people wanting to play pickup games. Basically, 10 people get together, choose who they want to play with, and then they start a game. Usually ends amicably, and then they split up. Or do a rematch. Something like the built-in matchmaking system, but better in every possible way, and not to mention, it gives some, albeit minimal, LAN experience, where you have to set up quickly and play in an environment where you aren't accustomed to. Although it doesn't happen too often, there are also scrims, which is a practice between two teams that are already established, and more coordinated than the average PUG team. So I come in for my first time, chat with the other players, make friends, describe some of the cool plays I made before, and play a few games. Nothing too special. But oh no, CS Beard doesn't like that because, apparently, nobody is allowed to brag about themselves when he's around, because of course he's the best player ever, and that nobody gets to threaten his glory. He said something along those lines. I might be exaggerating, I don't know. I ignore the fucker because that's, I don't know, stupid? CS Beard starts getting closer, and I can smell his atrocious BO oozing off of him. Not to mention that there were some stains on his shirt that were most likely from the 200 cans of soda that he probably chugged in maybe 3 hours. Either way, he was the typical neckbeard type. He gets even closer to the point where I can smell his horrible, horrible breath. Apparently, he was trying to look menacing or something. I don't know. But that's what I thought, and oh boy was it starting to get hard not to laugh at him. So I slowly started inching away from him to take a seat at one of the computers. I thought I could get away from the fucker if I started playing a game, because he should understand that if someone is playing a game, you shouldn't bother them unless it's urgent. But no, he didn't stop bothering me. Instead, he took a seat and joined the opposing team, who had one more spot left. I filled the 4th spot of the team I joined, and we were waiting for someone else to come in and play. In comes a relatively fit guy who I'll call Savior, that takes the 5th spot in our team. Keep this guy in mind, he comes back later. The game starts. It's a close one, and we lose. CS Beard is all smug and entitled, thinking he proved his point that he was the best player in this entire cafe, and that the team he was on got carried because he was just so good, and that his strategies were godlike, etc., etc. The guy was full of himself. At this point I'm slightly frustrated because I couldn't beat him, and that I should have played so much better. Basically, I'm re-evaluating how I played that round, criticizing myself for each misplay or each time I could have avoided dying if I didn't peek right into the barrel of that guy's gun, etc., etc. It's around 6 p.m. and I leave the cafe, trying to catch a bus home. Xavier is waiting right beside me at the bus stop, and suddenly decides to start some small talk. Xavier: "Man, that guy was a total asshole. Would be great if someone could teach him a lesson." Me: "Yeah, I wonder what would happen if he gets destroyed." Xavier: "Would be great." He also asked me for a picture, which I gave him. Next day comes by, I drop in, make small talk, and then I notice that CS Beard was accompanied by 4 other Neckbeards. I see all 5 of them start walking towards me, and holy fucking shit, I thought CS Beard was bad, but multiply that by 5 times, and you got the Neckbeards. They're older. The actual fuck. I thought I was in a dumpster for a moment. They were all glaring at me from a row of computers, maybe a few feet away from me. Then their attention was taken by 4 other people who came into the cafe. 2 women, another relatively fit guy, and Xavier himself. Of course, the Neckbeards tried courting them and failed miserably. Xavier told them to back off, and apparently, that was enough to send them in a rage, as all of them started ranting to each other about how women weren't true gamers, and that they only played just to impress the males. Apparently, that ticked one of the 2 women off, as she immediately challenged all of them. Her friends are there to back her up, but CS Beard makes a really good observation. There's 5 of us, Neckbeards, and 4 of them, normal people. She replies with, "What do you mean? We already have 5, he's just over there." She then points to me. I'm surprised at how confidently she said that, whilst pointing at me, a 14-year-old kid that only came here to have fun and not be competitive. But since I harbour a grudge against the Neckbeards, I join in on Xavier's team. We set up a match, a best of 3, pick and ban maps, and then it was on. Basically choose what maps you play on and what maps you won't play on. And it's a quick 2-0 for us. The entire matchup probably lasted just above 1 hour. I played out of my mind that day, even though I wasn't performing as good as my 4 other teammates. After the match, CS Beard starts wailing and throwing a tantrum on how we were cheating, and that what just happened was impossible. His 4 other friends were just sitting there, quietly sulking in shame as their reality was broken. After the Neckbeards stomp out of the cafe in shame and in a tantrum, I learned that Xavier's team of 4, including him, were all players in the ESEA Open Division, and that Xavier put together a team after going through maybe 3 or 4 other cafes in my area. Apparently, he was just really bored and had nothing else to do the entire day, and had the impulse decision to teach a Neckbeard the meaning of being humble. 4. Homecoming season rolled around, and with it brought the desperate race to find a date, causing several young beards to crawl out of their mama's basements in search of a naive female to clumsily court. I don't know what it is about high school dances, but they awaken a deep need within the humble gentle sir to find a girlfriend. However, they never seem to want women even remotely within their grasp. Oh no, they must reach for the ones who are completely unattainable or already taken. Unfortunately for me, a beard by the name of Peter had his eyes on me. I frolicked through life, completely ignorant to the fact that I had been getting peered at from the shadows. Occasionally I would catch Peter seemingly staring at me or his car drive by my house, but I brushed it off. I had never spoken to the kid in my life. Why would he have any interest? Plus, Peter had friends of his own who seemed to share the Neckbeard lifestyle. I saw them occasionally, all clad in full Neckbeard attire, playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And loudly laughing whilst a few overweight miladies displayed an overt amount of affection for them. He was an outcast, for sure, but a happy one. A week before the dance, I rolled up to class, quite literally, seconds before the bell rang one day. I frantically spun in my locker combo, yanked open the door, and to my surprise, found that my stuff had been haphazardly gone through, most notably my gym bag. Placed gingerly on the peak of the mess was a neatly folded sheet of notebook paper, with my name scrawled in scratchy cursive. As anybody would be in that situation, I was shocked and a little confused. But I didn't have time to deal with it, so I shoved the note in my backpack and vowed to come back to it when I had more coffee in my system and the time to assess the damage. After school, I sat down in front of my locker and reorganized my shit. None of my school supplies were damaged or stolen, which I found odd. Upon further inspection of my gym bag, however, I found that my sports bra, tampons, and favorite pair of underwear had vanished. In a state of mild panic, I pulled the crumpled note out of my backpack. It was filled with cringy comments on my looks, especially my flowing golden hair, bumbling analogies about love, talk about how he had been essentially stalking me for months, and a wish that I would be his girlfriend forever. I decided to just ignore the problem, hoping Peter would just be satisfied to jack off to my underwear and fizzle back into the shadows quietly. I felt that a large confrontation would possibly cause him to become aggressive, and I already had enough stress in my life at the time. Over the course of the week, Peter became increasingly agitated. He followed me with his truck as I walked home, honking and hollering for me to get in the car in an extremely aggressive tone. I snapped, telling him that if he didn't stop acting like a wormy, rapey fuckhead, I was going to have to get the cops involved. He retreated just long enough for me to think it was over. As I sat in art class, peacefully doing pottery the day before homecoming though, I received a delivery of a dozen half-wilted roses from a very nosy office lady. Tucked among the flowers was yet another note. Peter had somehow come to the realization that I just don't like nerds and that's why I wouldn't date him. In his letter, he promised to change my mind if I would just go to the dance with him. He seemed to have lifted a large amount of lines from the song Cool Night, which really creeped me out most of all. One of my friends, after reading the note, insisted on walking me home that afternoon. Of course, Peter came creeping down the road. When he saw that I was with a guy, he began screaming about, I kid you not, "Chad's getting all the good girls," and how I was a total slut for moving on so fast. It was so cliché neckbeard behavior that I almost felt like he had to be joking. After his tantrum, he sped off. I probably should have reported him after that incident, but I chose to just ignore him again. This time, though, he seemed to be butthurt enough to stay away. Thankfully, I never had an incident with Peter again. 5. Greetings again, fellow anthropologists. When we left off, my comrade and I were surrounded by the advancing commune of Lady Beards, who had the clear intent of forcing us into the lumpy confines of their embrace. Luckily for the two of us, the Lady Beards in question were too heavy and out of shape to engage in a glumph, a kind of diving tackle used to subdue weaker prey and force advances on them. This allowed us to evade them by diving around a table and throwing out a bushel of French fries. Any sexual intentions the doughy women may have had were immediately quenched by the starchy foods, and we were free to resume our studies, thankfully unmolested. The Neckbeards, seeing our struggles, began talking about their ideal waifus, or fictional characters that they wanted to be married to. This conversation included a wide array of foreign or made-up names from materials I had never heard of. The discussions were more involved than the dogma of most religions. When asked about my own waifu, I knew that this was a make-or-break moment for the tribe's trust in me. Mind racing, I stated that my favorite was Arganara from the show Superpower Panty Thieves 5. And luckily, none of the Neckbeards thought to check the validity of my statement or source material. It was during this interaction that I saw them approaching. Two younger women, one with pink hair and the other with green-tipped blonde hair. They were both slim and well-dressed. Everything about their appearance said that they should avoid this fragrant tribe like the plague. And yet, they dived right into the middle of the group. The pink-haired one pulled out a small deck of magic cards, while the green-tipped one began talking with the matriarchs of the Neckbeards. My first thoughts were that they must be anthropologists like my friend and I. What other reasons could they have for this behavior? Seeing the magic cards, Jackson Beard stomped over to the pink-haired girl and tipped his leather fedora to her.
"Do you want to play?"
He grunted sweatily. She took a seat and smiled at him. "Yeah, though I'm afraid my cards aren't too good." They began playing, and the pink-haired girl was almost instantly defeated. The small talk between the match was crude, and for the sake of posterity, I must record it. Jackson Beard.
"You're cute. Are you single?"
Pink girl. "Yeah, though I plan on staying that way." Jackson Beard.
"Yeah, you could date me. That way all the other guys in the college will leave you alone."
Pink girl. "I might consider it." At this point, she was losing. Ugh, my vampires are getting beaten. Jackson Beard. "Do you have any?" Rattles off the names of several cards. Pink girl. "No, sadly money is really tight for me. Having those cards would make me so happy." Jackson Beard. Obvious Neckbeard plot is being schemed. After this game, Jackson Beard stood, tipped his hat, and said that he would be right back. The other smaller Neckbeards, like so many elephant seals, took advantage of the fatter dominant male being away and made for the females. A series of magic games were set up, and conversations so laughable as to make Jackson Beard look as eloquent as Shakespeare were muttered through. One memorable Neckbeard didn't even talk or look directly at the girl. He simply sat down and began playing. When the game was done, he stood up and silently walked away. The turning point was when Jackson Beard returned, clutching a small collection of cards in his orange-stained hands. With great ceremony, he handed them over to the pink-haired girl, who said a quick "thanks" and began going through them. As she rattled them off, my comrade began consulting the field guide, and totaled the price of the cards at a staggering $70. Jackson Beard smiled at her so widely, I could see his past 5 meals scattered about his teeth, and stated that
"It was a gift for endowing this area with such beauty."
Pink Hair's reaction was to smile, help her build a deck so she could beat down these guys. I then realized that she was not an anthropologist, but a poacher. However, as a neutral observer, I cannot ethically involve myself in the tribe's travails. However, I must remind you that no empathy must be mustered on behalf of the odorificus Neckbeardica, given the long list of behaviors which are not mentioned in polite company. The 3 matriarchs of the Ladybeard tribe are all fearsome in their own rights. The first is Rotherbeard, a heavy woman who lumbered around with an improvised dolly, made of milk crates and wheels. She used to carry her backpack, a microwave, a pantry's worth of canned food, and to crush the toes of anyone who refused to move out of her way quickly enough. When she hungered, she would plug in her microwave and cook her food. This is not to say that there were no microwaves on the campus, just that they were on the other side of the student center, and she did not deign to walk like other peons. The second queen was Social Warrior Beard, and as the name might evoke, she was a fighter for everyone's social rights. In fact, my last sentence likely violated several of her sensibilities by assuming her gender. She would often get riled up by the Neckbeards and would lead a daily crusade against the injustices created by the white males. The third and final matriarch was the Otherkin Queen. She was less abhorrent than the other matriarchs by about 50 pounds, but compensated by her extreme views. In her mind, every person had an animal spirit inside them, and it was only a matter of the person being self-aware enough to see it. She would often try to convert people to the Otherkin ranks, and depending on the sanity of the person she was preaching to, it would have varying results. Any attacks on one of the matriarchs would rally all the other Lady Beards to their side, and drown out all competition in a wave of estrogen screeches and cries of, "You triggered me." It was an impressive communal display of reliance, though the moment outwards opposition was encountered, they would rapidly devolve into attacking each other over husbandos and theories on the show Sherlock. It was still new at the time. Next time I write, I shall detail the horrors of the Halloween celebrations, the opulent displays of some of the quieter neckbeards, and even the poacher's attempts to weaponize her newfound friends in the tribe. The true cringe of the neckbeard has yet to be displayed, and it will be continued. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Neckbeards in the Wild, number 4 I think we're on now. Thanks very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Let's see, I think this goes out on a Sunday for you guys, doesn't it? Well, I hope you're all having a nice weekend, and you lucky people who are at Comic-Con, I hope you're having fun and I hope you're staying safe too. I'll be looking through YouTube at some point over the weekend, hoping people have filmed the various panels for things I like, and that they've put them up for me so I can watch them. For me personally, that's the best way. I'm not a big fan of crowds, so this will be the best way to enjoy them for me. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.